Welcome to This Day in His Story, created by American Heritage Worldwide. A reminder that every day holds something new to learn. Did you know that after John Quincy Adams served as the 6th President of the United States, he served 9 terms for a total of 17 years in the Massachusetts House of Representatives? Learn how, after Adams gave an impassioned speech against slavery, he collapsed at his desk and died 2 days later.
Okay, so let's set the scene. It's February 21st, 1848. You're on the floor of the House of Representatives.
And this is not the C-SPAN version we see today. It's loud. It smells like, I don't know, tobacco and unwashed wool.
And it is actively hostile. The Mexican-American War has just wrapped up. The country has suddenly gotten way bigger, and everyone is yelling about one thing.
Slavery. It's the fault line that is just, about to crack the entire country in half.
Right. And in the middle of all of this, you have this 80-year-old man sitting at his desk.
He's probably the most famous guy in the room, but also, depending on who you ask, the most hated. He tries to get up to speak, to protest a vote thanking the war generals, and he just crumples.
A massive stroke.
Yeah.
Right there on the House floor. He never really gets back up. He dies 2 days later in the speaker's room. But the part of the story that always gets me isn't the death itself. It's the funeral.
Ah, yeah. It's one of those moments where history just seems to rhyme, doesn't it?
It's perfect. Because one of the men chosen for the arrangements committee, basically a pallbearer, was this quiet, kind of awkward freshman congressman from Illinois.
A guy who was, at that point, pretty unhappy with his own career.
Exactly. A man named Abraham Lincoln.
Wow. You have the literal passing of the torch. John Quincy Adams, a man who, as a kid, watched the Battle of Bunker Hill from a hilltop, is carried out by the man who's going to save the Union.
And that connection is why we're doing this deep dive. We're not really here to talk about his presidency.
I mean, let's be honest, it was a bit of a disaster.
It really was. No, we're here to talk about the second act, the comeback.
Yeah.
Because John Quincy Adams did something no other U.S. president has ever done.
He left the White House totally humiliated, and instead of retiring, he went back to the very bottom of the ladder. He got elected to Congress.
And that's our mission today. We want to figure out how a man goes from the most powerful job in the world to being a freshman representative and somehow becomes more important, more heroic than he ever was as president.
It's such a wild career path. I mean, can you imagine a former president today running for a House seat?
No.
Yeah.
It's unthinkable. You're supposed to write your memoir, build a library, give some expensive speeches, and that's it.
Right. But Adams just breaks the mold. He serves 9 straight terms in the House, almost 18 years, right up until the day he died.
But the question is why, right? He's the son of a founding father. He'd been an ambassador, a senator, secretary of state, president. He had nothing left to prove.
He really didn't. Why would you throw yourself back into that political mud pit at 63 years old?
What was driving him?
Well, I think he was obsessed with duty. And maybe just a little bit he enjoyed the fight. But to really get why he was willing to do this, you have to look at how he was raised. He wasn't a normal politician. He was like a lab experiment.
That's a great way to put it. His parents, John and Abigail Adams, they basically engineered him to be the perfect statesman from birth.
They absolutely did. And it started so early. I mean, most 11-year-olds are worried about video games. At 11, John Quincy is crossing the Atlantic in the middle of winter on a leaky ship with his dad on a diplomatic mission to France during the Revolution.
And it wasn't some kind of summer camp. This was high-stakes stuff.
Exactly. And by the time he's 14, he's not just, tagging along anymore. He's fluent in French, Dutch, and pretty much German. And then he gets a job.
Not a paper route, I'm guessing.
No. He becomes the private secretary and interpreter for the U.S. diplomat to Russia.
A 14-year-old in the court of Catherine the Great.
Yep. In St. Petersburg. Thousands of miles from home, translating these incredibly complex documents. His entire childhood was spent with serious old men discussing the fate of nations.
That explains so much about him later. People always said he was cold, that he couldn't connect with people.
Well, how could he? He never really had a childhood to learn how. He was just a brain, a very, very powerful brain. By his early 20s, George Washington himself makes him ambassador to the Netherlands, then Prussia.
So he's seeing the Napoleonic Wars up close. He's dealing with kings and czars.
Right. So when he finally comes back and enters American politics, he is operating on a completely different level.
He's playing 3D chess, and everyone else is, in a bar fight.
And that intellectual superiority was actually a huge problem for him as president.
We should probably touch on that. He wins in 1824, but it was Messy.
Messy is a kind word for it. He loses the popular vote to Andrew Jackson, but wins in the House. Jackson's people called it the corrupt bargain.
So he walks into the White House already wounded.
Totally. He has this amazing agenda. He wants to build infrastructure, a national university, even astronomical observatories, which he called lighthouses of the skies.
That's a beautiful phrase.
It is. But his enemies just mocked him for it. They blocked everything he tried to do. For 4 years, he was just paralyzed.
And then Jackson comes back in 1828 and just crushes him.
It was a humiliating defeat. He went home to Massachusetts, and he wrote in his diary that his public life was over. He was basically just waiting to die.
And then what happens?
His neighbors from the Plymouth district come to him and say, "Hey, will you run for our seat in Congress?"
And this is the pivot. This is the whole story.
It is. His own family told him it was beneath his dignity. A former president in the House of Representatives. It was unheard of, degrading.
But what does he say?
He said, and this is pure Adams, no person could be degraded by serving the people.
So he goes back. And now get to the second act. Because the guy who shows up in Congress in 1831 is not the stiff, ineffective President Adams. He is unleashed.
He had nothing left to lose. And that's the most dangerous politician there is. He didn't care about his party. He didn't need to climb any higher. He just saw this storm coming over slavery and decided he was going to be the lightning rod.
Okay, so this brings us to the gag rule, which sounds kind of boring and procedural, but it was actually a fight for the soul of the country.
It really was. It was the central fight in the House for almost 10 years.
Huh.
So the abolitionist movement is growing, right? And people in the North are sending thousands of petitions to Congress demanding an end to slavery.
And the Southern congressmen are freaking out.
Totally. They feel like they're under siege. So in 1836, they pass a rule that says, essentially, any petition related to slavery gets immediately tabled. It can't be read, it can't be debated, it can't even be mentioned.
We will not talk about that.
We will not hear you, exactly.
Yeah.
Which, for a guy like John Quincy Adams, who worshiped the Constitution, that was like waving a red flag in front of a bull.
Right. Even if he wasn't a radical abolitionist to begin with, attacking the right to petition it set him off.
It turned him into a crusader. He knew the rule book better than anyone, so he started this campaign of what you might call malicious compliance.
How do you do that? How do you talk about slavery when the rule says you can't talk about slavery?
You get clever. So one day, he stands up and says he has a petition from 22 enslaved people.
Wow.
And the House just explodes. The Southerners are screaming treason. They want to censure him, burn the petition. They spend days just raging about it.
And he just lets them go.
He lets them rant and rave for 3 full days. Then, when he finally gets the floor back, he calmly reveals that the petition was actually in favor of slavery. But it was too late.
He baited them.
He baited them. He tricked them into spending 3 days arguing about whether or not enslaved people had a right to petition their government. He completely exposed their hypocrisy.
And he did this kind of thing all the time.
Constantly. He would clog the gears of government with these procedural tricks until they had to deal with him. It was exhausting. He was getting death threats. People were shunning him.
His enemies called him the madman of Massachusetts.
They did. But he called himself Old Man Eloquent. And you have to remember, this is a physical battle, too. The House floor was a violent place. People carried weapons. And here's this old, short man shouting down guys half his age.
And he won.
He won. After 8 years of fighting, in 1844, he finally got the gag rule repealed. It was this huge victory for the First Amendment, and he did it almost single-handedly through sheer stubbornness.
But that wasn't his only fight. We have to talk about the Amistad case. This is maybe his greatest moment.
The Amistad is the crown jewel, for sure. It's 1841. You've got these 53 Africans who were kidnapped, put on a Spanish ship, and they mutiny. They kill the captain and try to sail home.
But they end up off the coast of Long Island, and they're thrown in jail.
And the stakes are huge. Spain wants them back as property. The U.S. government wants to just hand them over to make the problem go away.
And so the case goes all the way to the Supreme Court.
It does. And the abolitionists defending the Africans, they realize they need someone the court can't just ignore. They need a heavyweight.
So they go to the 73-year-old former president who hasn't practiced law in decades and is half blind.
And he doesn't want to do it. He thinks he's too rusty. But he takes the case, and he gets up to deliver the final argument.
Now, when we hear final argument, we're thinking, a 20-minute speech from a movie.
Try 8.5 hours.
8.5 hours.
Over 2 days. He spoke until the court adjourned, came back the next day, and just kept going. And he wasn't just arguing the case. He was putting the entire United States on trial.
So what was his core argument?
Yeah.
Because legally, weren't they considered property?
That was the government's position. But Adams just blew that up. He argued from natural law, from the Declaration of Independence. He said, look, these men were born free, they were kidnapped, the international slave trade is illegal, therefore they were never legally slaves.
They were free men fighting for their lives.
Exactly. He said they had the natural right to kill their kidnappers to escape. His great line was, the ship was theirs. He reframed them from pirates to heroes, and he basically pointed to the copy of the Declaration on the courtroom wall and dared the justices to live up to it.
And they did. He won.
He won. The court ordered the Africans to be freed and returned home. It's the only time a former president ever argued before the Supreme Court, and he saved 53 lives.
It all comes back to that second act. If he had just retired, those men would have been sent back to Cuba and executed.
No question. And the gag rule might have stayed in place. History turns on these decisions, the decision to just show up and fight.
We started with his death, and there's a little piece of technology in that story that I think is so symbolic.
You mean the telegraph?
Yeah. Adams was born in 1767. A message traveled at the speed of a horse. When he died in the Capitol, the news was sent across the country instantly by telegraph.
It's the perfect bookend. He's a man of the Enlightenment who lives to see the dawn of the modern age. He was a bridge. He knew Benjamin Franklin, and he served in Congress with Abraham Lincoln.
And if you go to the Capitol today, to what used to be the House chamber, there's still a marker on the floor where his desk was.
There is a bronze plaque. They call it the whispering spot because of the strange acoustics. If you stand on that spot, you can hear people whispering from clear across the room.
Which is funny because he spent his whole career listening to his enemies whisper and plot against him.
And shouting right back at them. The legend is he used that acoustic trick to eavesdrop on his opponents. But true or not, it marks the spot where he fell. A soldier dying on the battlefield.
So if we bring this all together, you have the child prodigy, the failed president, the heroic congressman. What's the big takeaway from the life of John Quincy Adams?
I think it's about redefining what success means. On paper, the presidency was the peak of his career, but he failed at it. If he had stopped there, he'd be a footnote.
Yeah, first son of a president to also be president. A trivia question.
Exactly. But he redefined success as being useful. He didn't let his ego stop him from finding a way to be useful, even if it meant taking a quote-unquote lesser job.
It's also about just persistence. He fought the gag rule for 8 years. He lost constantly. Most people would have just given up.
He had a personal motto that I think is really powerful. He would ask himself, what do you believe in that is worth working and fighting for?
Working and fighting, that's a key distinction.
It is. Belief isn't passive. It's not enough to just think something is right. You have to work for it. And sometimes you have to fight for it, even when the whole world is telling you to sit down and shut up.
And you don't have to be a former president to do that.
Not at all. And he didn't do it alone either. He had the abolitionists, his constituents, who kept sending him back.
So maybe that's the final thought for everyone listening. Find your Amistad. Find the thing you believe is worth that fight.
And then find the people who will fight with you. Start that conversation. Because if an 80-year-old man could stand up for 9 hours to defend the freedom of strangers, we can probably all do a little more.
That is a perfect place to leave it. John Quincy Adams. A pretty bad president, but an absolutely great American.
A statesman who found his true calling in his second act.
Thank you for joining us for this day in his story. May the lessons of yesterday inspire you to see God's hand today and to play your part in his story now. For more faith-based learning, visit ahsworldwide.org, the homeschool for faith and family.